Hello, welcome to the CUBE Pod. I'm John Furrier with Dave Vellante for episode 96. We are here in our New York Stock Exchange. Dave, salute. Fist
Hey
pump.
John, what's happening? Good to be face to face. I mean, we've seen a lot of you down here lately.
I've been here. You've been on the road for 3 weeks. MWC. You went on vacation. You're looking mighty tan.
I'm sorry about that.
Everyone didn't believe my story that said that you actually booked a vacation around GTC, so you were there, but we had a schedule snafu on our internal docs that showed it in April, and you actually were bummed to find out that you locked in a cruise, sailing trip with your wife, and a week you thought was free, but it was the heart of the Super Bowl of the tech, which by the way, we said
that was your term. That was no, because one of the Wall Street analysts called it the Woodstock of AI.
Last year.
And then in a CUBE pod, you said, it's like the Super Bowl of AI, and then Jensen picked that up, which is brilliant. Because
he said on stage.
Because think about it, because the Woodstock was like this cultural event, right? And that's what GTC was last year. And then the Super Bowl, like after the first one, it was like, okay, another one, and another one. And then they're great every year, they're big spectacles, and that's what GTC is now.
First of all,
but there was nothing like the one last year, which was Woodstock. There's never going to be another Woodstock.
Yeah, of course, it's one and done, all the
top
players
right.
are there.
That's why the Super Bowl analogy was genius, and he picked up on it.
First of all, Jensen Huang is a huge fan of theCUBE. We know that, we've heard some emails internally, and also, we love the fact that this is he called Super Bowl because we have super cloud, and of course they have a super chip. So it's super cool.
In a super cycle.
Super cycle. It's super cool. And plus Nvidia is, and he dropped the term on his keynote multiple times. He said the word computer science. He's the only CEO on stage that actually references computer science in the most proud, coolest way, because we are in a super cycle of computer science revolution. Everything is being flipped upside down. I buy the Kool-Aid from Nvidia when they talk about how computer science is changing the world, because remember our first slogan on SiliconANGLE was, and it's still on our masthead from the original post, where computer science meets social science.
Right.
So now we're seeing crypto, trailblazers, social change, we got the impact arm developing.
Art
is coming soon, art tech, sports tech. You're going to see a lot of cool cultural shifting going on, impact investing, tech for good, AI for good. So, huge fan of Jensen. The only thing I didn't like about the GTC is that I don't think that the positioning of homogeneous stacks will fly. They use that word a couple times in some of the analyst sessions, but I think you can have homogeneity in certain parts of the stack, but heterogeneous is a world. Again, I've been super critical on that analysis piece. Dave, it's just, GTC, we'll get into that, but so much going on.
But it was interesting, by the way, that he announced big Ethernet initiative, right? The Super Ethernet.
Yeah,
right?
Spectrum X was the big topic.
Yeah.
I was publishing pretty aggressively, and then what's really awesome, that was a real discovery for us at SiliconANGLE and theCUBE, is that Perplexity, and to some extent ChatGPT, but Perplexity more than ChatGPT, is picking up SiliconANGLE and theCUBE in real time. We're getting great results from them recognizing theCUBE as high velocity posting our high frequency insights, because we're all about getting stuff up fast. So we're being rewarded now, kind of like an accidental benefit coming from the innovation from Perplexity. So shout out to Arvin and the team at Perplexity. Keep crawling our stuff. It's on YouTube, it's everywhere, it's on LinkedIn. So much more action coming from Perplexity actually instrumenting our distribution network effect, which is a big part of how we do business. So
they're now they've integrated DeepSeek reasoning models in Perplexity, so you can choose.
Yeah,
which is
I just asked Perplexity, is John Furrier an analyst? It posts out a thing. I did a LinkedIn.
Of course, John Furrier's an analyst.
An influencer analyst hybrid. Mary Camerata kind of coined that term originally when she was at Amazon. But also, I asked it to summarize Michael Dell's interview at Nvidia GTC. No mention of theCUBE. All the reference material completely synthesized from our CUBE video and our articles. Beautiful summary on the data we have. So AI is already starting to show what we've been seeing in our corpus of data, which is it's doing the synthesis and the reasoning around the shorts. You're starting to see the videos and the text, Dave, get shortened down and compressed for consumption. And again, I think this is going to change what media is and news. So again, so much going on the end user side, benefit of AI, and of course, enterprise AI, you got massive AI infrastructure. Nvidia's now an infrastructure player. IBM with their upcoming Z launch. We're going to hear a lot about that on April 8th. We got the analyst briefing this week in New York. Just a lot of new stuff coming on the scene. Dell AI Factories, we had great conversation with Michael Dell. Antonio Neri, I interviewed him at GTC. Again, more there. I had Jensen Huang lined up with Antonio. That looked good, but Jim Cramer was there. He got in the booth crawl. You know, Jim's awesome, he was great. Good to see him at the event. He's here also at the NYSE. He's actually probably running a show right now as we speak, since it's kind of end of the day here, but a lot of tech coverage coming mainstream enterprise, Dave. So, you know, SiliconANGLE, Wikibon, our original companies that we merged together back in 2010, is the center of the action. I mean, enterprise tech is the coolest thing because AI.
Well, it was interesting to hear Jensen kind of talk about how, which we didn't get it wrong, but he said everybody got it wrong with the DeepSeek. Well, everybody meaning, you know, a lot of investors, you know, got it wrong. Or maybe it was just a reaction to the news or algorithms or whatever, but there was a lot of negative, and there still is a lot of misunderstanding about DeepSeek. But his point was, you're going to need 100 times more compute to actually run these reasoning models. So it's actually a good thing. So we'll see how that all plays out. But and I think, to me, just watching the GTC videos from the keynotes and the other content and the social streams from afar, I would say that, to me, Nvidia even further solidified its moat and created this whole new vector around robotics. Next week we've got the robotics show here at NYSE. And so that is, I mean, talk about trillion-dollar markets. Like, robotics is everything physical. So, and they've got a stack for robotics, an AI stack for robotics. I think that's going to be really amazing to watch unfold.
So, actually, I just asked Perplexity, what was my analysis of GTC? The fourth bullet was industry impact. Furrier described GTC as a bellwether event and the Super Bowl of AI for tech professionals building in the space. The AIs are so smart, Dave. I got to say, they're really good. Market transition, the Blackwell architecture, the AI infrastructure revolution. Dynamo AI as an OS, I thought, I might have been the only analyst that kind of honed in on that, and Kevin Deerling, who's the member from
Talking about the OS?
Yeah, he was actually involved in KV Cache and Dynamo. Really was the first time I've heard anyone ever say, there's an operating system for AI, right? And so I've been waiting for that moment for a long time and waiting to say, what do you run on a Dell AI factory? What do you run on these machines? And you know, it's going to be something like from Z, you see Linux with Red Hat, OpenShift. Hybrid cloud and AI infrastructure are merging at a breakneck pace. And I think you're going to see the people who have done the work. AI is going to reward the companies, in my opinion, on the ones that have done the work. When I say done the work, I mean the ones who were actually doing stuff. Red Hat's been writing compatibility, plumbing for RHEL for years with open source and their version, so Red Hat runs on everything. You can run that on any machine with a click of a button. You can change that hardware. So I think this AI revolution, and now you're starting to see the formation of these OSs, you're going to see performance increases, you're going to see much more coordination, and I think it's going to open up the agent market. I think you know, data was a big discussion. I mentioned the industry impact of that being a great event, but the market transition, you know, David Furrier discussed this around the new computing era with you years ago, extreme parallel processing. You guys, I think, laid that out in 2011. Accelerated, we were the first ones to really be on Mellanox. They got to $1 billion in revenue and then got stuck because they only had a few customers. And then, you know, I talked to Kevin Deerling, who's now a senior vice president at Nvidia. I would say that Mellanox probably was one of the main reasons why Nvidia is worth so much. Because InfiniBand really connected everything early on. Now they're obviously diversifying with the Ethernet, but the InfiniBand move with Mellanox was probably one of the most strategic value acquisitions. I mean, we talk about VMware and EMC, we talk about some other acquisitions in terms of dollar and impact, but Mellanox, small little thing, puzzle piece.
Which is interesting. So
Nvidia really nailed that whole, bring the processors together, bring those GPUs and create that interconnect.
I think a lot of people looked at InfiniBand at the time, John, and said, you know, it's got advantages today, but long-term Ethernet's going to win. So a company like Broadcom said Ethernet, open, long-term, enduring, we're not interested. You know, Oracle was, you know, using InfiniBand, right? I mean, Larry Ellison loves InfiniBand, or loved InfiniBand. I think they still use it, but not to the extent that they used to. So the brilliance of the move that NVIDIA made is they saw that in order to enable the AI wave that Jensen and team saw coming, they needed that kind of internetworking capability. And so even though, you know, it may ultimately, I think it will, you know, lose out from a volume standpoint to Ethernet, it's a bridge that allowed NVIDIA to get to be first. And then the second thing that I would point out is, you know, that really isn't a big part of NVIDIA's moat. I mean, it's a part of the moat today, but long term, their moat is in their ability to crank out, you know, higher performance each year, and in all the software stack, all the libraries around it, not just CUDA, but all the other surrounding components, the OS piece, the IoT and edge components that they have. That whole software stack is just, you know, incredible. And so, and there's no reason they can't apply all that to Ethernet, right? So the networking, you know, Broadcom, okay, they're a stronger networking company.
Well, I mean, I think the Ethernet battle is clearly going to win, but,
yeah, no question.
But the role of the interconnect of InfiniBand at that point in time made NVIDIA's stock soar, because that transition to the AI clouds, that transition to that value, hyperscale's already had their own version of InfiniBand, but it really proves the model. I won't say proof of concept, but proof of reference architecture, right? So that just changed the game. Other things that are going on around NVIDIA that's kind of related. If you think about NVIDIA, they got into gaming first, then crypto, and now AI. We've had the AI, the Crypto Trailblazer series. Brian Bauman put that together with the NYSE Wired and the CUBE community in Palo Alto. We're going to do one here in New York. We're doing a bunch of interviews here. But really interesting points emerge. One is the market maturation of crypto is maturing. We had Kraken on, they're going to go public. They come out of the US, into the US again. The market climate's good. The infrastructure development looks a lot like AWS in the early days, starting to see much more people working on scalable solutions that are hit escape velocity. And that scalability we're seeing is going to be critical. We had Falcon X on, they're doing so many legit transactions, developer focus, Ethereum's growth, Solana's growth, social impact, cultural shift. Institutional interest in blockchain is legit. You're starting to see in the US, banks and institutions connect. And the question is obviously Bitcoin with the reserve in the US that Trump did, but also Solana and Ethereum. Solana with the lead right now on performance, looks like a payment rail can be developed in a way that's got the throughput to match into institutional banking. A huge deal. Real world applications are coming on the blockchain. And the market cycle obviously is hot right now. So I think we're going to see a rebirth of the crypto infrastructure market, Dave, where tokens, not tokens in the NVIDIA world, tokens as in instrumenting networks, instrumenting network effects, instrumenting value, store of value, we all know Bitcoin's there, but Ethereum and Solana are in a head-to-head race for who's going to capture the on-chain networks. And the one that has the best performance and the lower cost will win. And that's what Solana right now. The Ethereum's working real hard in that ecosystem. So it's going to be a race. It's going to be who can innovate faster. Obviously the meme coins and stable coins doing great. Stripe is involved in Solana. Ethereum's got the developer community with layer 2, and then they call roll-ups. So you're going to see a real legit cycle of innovation in crypto. And a lot of people are poo-pooing this because they got the fraud in their mind, but you know, the whole, you know, fast and loose, pump and dump schemes of crypto, I think will fall to the wayside pretty quickly. And I think the culture and the self-governance going on in these communities are going to be critical, but the notion of taking down intermediaries and being more efficient rhymes with all the AI trends. So AI and crypto infrastructure kind of sounding the same, Dave. It's the same kind of theme. Efficiencies, transparency, re-architecting things. So you were just talking to Palo Alto Networks, again, same thing. AI is completely changing, and what Jensen Huang said at GTC was so right on, that the way things were isn't going to be the way the things are going to go going forward. AI has absolutely changed the game, and all the hype around agents aside, they're coming fast, but all that underlying infrastructure is being retooled, replatformed, reinvented.
To exploit AI.
And Amazon and Google are going to do very well on this. Azure, not so sure, we'll see. They also got OpenAI, but OpenAI is looking to do a storage cloud outside of Azure. I got a scoop on that developing. So,
sorry, you just threw out like 6 topics.
Dealer's choice.
I want to go back. I want to go back to Ethereum because, to your point, it's under a lot of pressure. And if you look at the price action in Ethereum, it broke really essentially a 10-year cycle where every time Bitcoin hit a new high, Ethereum would hit a new high. It didn't this last cycle. It couldn't get back to its previous highs, and that's a signal that investors aren't as enthusiastic about it. And Solana has picked up, a lot of momentum.
I asked that question to the Ethereum Foundation when they came in. They said, look at usage. So usage is up. So what's happened is that Ethereum's gotten reined in a bunch of stuff, but the usage is up. So developers are still wed to the EVM, the Ethereum virtual machine, which is not a first-party citizen on Solana. So again, Solana made a decision not to support the virtual machine. They want to buy their intentional design, kind of going against the grain, and that's why they're getting performance. So the performance levels of Solana are much stronger than Ethereum, and the price per transaction is way too high on Ethereum right now, and they admit that. Solana, it's open to everybody. It's almost like $15 to $150 per transaction. You can gas it up, but that's cost. So if you're going to do a payment rails, you can't be charging. A lot of these transactions are small on a Solana, so they work. You can't do small transactions on Ethereum, mostly value-based transactions in that smart contract.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense in small transactions.
Makes 0 sense. So again, very different. So a lot of action
analysis.
there.
That's good. You're back in the crypto scene.
I love crypto. We love crypto. You and I you say, John, you don't like crypto. No, I never said I didn't like crypto. I didn't like the fraud. I mean, there was bad behavior.
A lot of fraud with paper money.
Yeah, exactly.
The U.S. dollars, a lot of fraud going on there.
There's laws here, though. Just don't get caught.
That's true. That's true. What about we haven't done a KubeCon in a while. What about that Google acquisition of Wiz? Wiz, I think it was originally $22 billion last RSA. That right around that time last spring, Google made the bid. RSA, rather Wiz turned it down. No, we want to do an IPO. And as I've said many times, typically these Israeli-born companies, they don't get to IPO. They usually get sold. I thought, well, maybe we're breaking a trend here. We talked about that when we did the crypto, with the cybersecurity event down here, this media week. But you think about Wiz now, so they got another $10 billion at least out of it with Google. I want to get your thoughts on that. And you got Sneak in the wings. I saw this CNBC article saying, this is really good thing for M&A and IPO. Is it still okay because guys like Sneak are going to go? I'm not sure. I'm not sure Sneak's going to go IPO. They're probably going to follow the same track. I think there's going to be serious consolidation in the cybersecurity space. And I'll just share with you something that Nikesh Arora, CEO of Palo Alto, said. He was calling the end of best of breed security tools. And I was like, is that because you're not best of breed? No, we are best of breed. But best of breed is a standalone tool. It's over. And
what was the reason?
His point being is it just, you can't afford, because the AI is now so good in the adversary's hands that humans can't deal with all the complexity. You have to consolidate. So that's their big play. When he started the company, they had 1% market share. I think they're up to 8% now. He was throwing around numbers like 40% market share. Can you imagine those guys getting 40% market share of a $100 billion market? That's kind of their aspiration.
Yeah.
So they're getting really aggressive. Obviously, they have a great deal of respect for CrowdStrike, Microsoft, and some others. But I think they're generally happy that Wiz went, because Wiz was hurting them, right? Wiz was like the shiny new toy that was competitive. Now Google takes them out. Google's got Mandiant, which is probably, an interesting cultural, right? Because Mandiant's really services. Now they get Wiz.
Well, I mean, the cloud-native application was the key thing for Google. One, Mandiant is awesome what they do, threat detection, but cloud-native application security, or endpoint protection, as some say, is a big one. The Israeli cyber unit 8200, which we interviewed a ton of them here when we had a cyber event here at NYSE. They had a big reception here. I just interviewed this week here in New York City Ari Goshen, who's the founder and CEO of AI21 Labs. He lives in Tel Aviv, he's Israeli. His friends all work there, and his wife's, his PR person's husband works there. They're all friends and they're all rich. I'm like, okay, $32 billion in cash, all cash transactions. So hats off to Wiz.
Yeah, it's an amazing deal. Congratulations.
A lot of people passed on this deal.
We'll see if
a lot of people passed on Wiz. I'm not going to name names in the Valley, but I know a lot of people passed on this.
Google can afford it, right? So, and this is, CNBC's analysis said Wiz's blockbuster deal could signal the opening of the floodgates for the IPO and M&A markets. I think it's the opposite for IPO. This is like, the reason they do an M&A is because the IPO market is tepid right now.
I think Trump is the factor behind the IPO freeze, mainly because there's so many wild cards involved. Rob Hof was posting on his notes about the clown car release of the attack plans, and just overall disruption that's going on in the US government. You got tariffs over here, you got tariffs over there, you got uncertainty with Doge. The disruption that's going on in the government and our geopolitical scenario is causing massive weirdness. So that's happening, and people, are going to have to pause and say, what are we doing? And I think that, first of all, the spring window is pretty much done. Fall window for IPOs, we'll see. I think it's not a done deal yet. Our previous guest that was in theCUBE today came on and said that spring 2026
next year, 2026
is going to be is probably the spot. That will give private equity some time to do some consolidation, but what about all those private equity deals that are dying to go public? They got to wait another year? So
we saw SailPoint went, and they got some liquidity for their investors. The Forrester analyst, this is their angle, Merit Maxim, having a more complete offering for securing workloads in the cloud. That's the core, the rationale behind the Wiz deal for Google. Forrester Vice President Research Director Merit Maxim said, I don't know. Let me ask you a question. Are you spending more time these days on Perplexity and ChatGPT or Google search? Where do you go for AI?
Perplexity.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to Google's search business. I mean, we all see this.
Perplexity is by far the best, in my opinion, for quick results, and they do a good job. They present it. The CubeAI.com I'm spending a lot of time on because I'm seeing great results from our AI data, where our unique data gets the questions that are specific to our domain. It actually gives answers. So our prompts are working great. They're also kind of working good on the Perplexity, almost as good, but we have sourcing. So like you're starting to see this again. The Wiz thing is going to be interesting because remember they partner with all the clouds. So now Google, this is about Amazon.
Well, Wiz runs on AWS.
Wiz runs on AWS, acquisition by Google.
Wiz runs on AWS.
Hey, the Wiz acquisition.
They may partner with other clouds, but they run on AWS.
Again, this is a wild card. Again, the cash transaction. Congratulations, everyone minting new millionaires in Israel. Thank you very much.
And the Israeli government making some money out of it.
Good bank on those guys. Again, we love the 8200 guys. We've interviewed them all here. Yeah. They're smart. They're CUBE friendly. They love the CUBE. By the way, they're all fans of the CUBE too, by the way. Yeah, but I think the Wiz deal is about Google against Amazon and Microsoft and that's where the competition is going to be. I think the Palo Alto is going to have to start figuring out where they play, and it looks like they're going to go AI enabled. But it's going to present some problems for Wiz because their relationship with AWS is going to change radically, obviously, because Google is Google. And so that'll be very interesting. I'm sure that was part of the deal terms. I'm not going to look at love to see the negotiations on the migration plan off AWS and what's going on in AWS right now.
Well, the other thing too is Wiz competes with Palo Alto. Palo Alto runs on BigQuery.
Did not know that. That's good information.
There's really only, based on my research, there's really only 3 data platforms that can handle the type of real-time sort of streaming capabilities that you need to do real-time security: Snowflake, Databricks, and BigQuery. So why pay Snowflake and Databricks premium? Why not just go right to Google and do BigQuery? We asked Nikesh about that, and he goes, look, I talk to Sundar and TK all the time. We're good customers. We're fine there. Yeah, we'll compete where we have to. And I don't think Google's going to sub-optimize its overall cloud relationships to optimize security. But let me ask you a question. Where in 5 years do you think Google is going to be gaining markets? Maybe autos, right? I mean, self-driving.
Health, financial services.
Okay.
Okay. Healthcare.
Not search, you would agree.
No, no.
Not
I
search.
mean, they got to go
Search is
after.
declining.
They
But
got retail.
Self-driving,
retail,
fintech,
retail, healthcare, automotive. So I think everyone's chasing.
YouTube will continue to thrive.
Everyone's chasing
Right?
those
You
three.
agree, YouTube?
AI right now, if you look at Nvidia, the top things were on digital twins is going to be financial services. They even mentioned FinTech TV was there. We saw them there. So all the financial services.
Automotive.
Healthcare and pharma. I'll put them in one bucket. And then auto.
Yep.
Those are the top three
Autos,
areas.
I think, is their biggest
They had a
vertical,
GM deal. They had all, because they're all running AI factories.
I think it's their number one vertical.
Those are the hot verticals there. Now Google will also hit those, but they specialize on retail because they're alternative to AWS.
And he laid out three vectors, I thought. It was AI in cloud, AI for enterprises, and then AI for the world, robots essentially, for the edge. And those are three huge markets.
I mean, the digital twin was a big topic. Digital twins, again, NVIDIA's a bellwether.
So
But by the way, Jensen Huang said in the analyst Q&A, hyperscalers are all doing AI today. Okay, basically admitted that. So that's all the clouds.
You mean doing AI for their own businesses?
And customers.
Yeah, for sure.
Not a lot of enterprise on-prem making it into production, so that validates our research.
But the premise is that AI will follow the data.
Yeah, and the on-prem is going to explode in
I
value.
think it is.
So on-premises will work.
It's going to take some time for them to build the stack.
Yeah, they don't have a factory. They don't have the factories yet. And they don't have an OS yet.
There's hardware.
Yeah, what runs on it?
A lot of hardware.
What runs on an AI factory? That's the question. NVIDIA wants it to be them. Now, I've said this on the CUBE pod, I'll say it again. Nobody wants to go back to proprietary stacks, right? So you can't be homogeneous, and NVIDIA is making the play.
A lot of Oracle customers running on proprietary
Jensen Huang
stacks.
said, some people adapt to the world, or you make the world adapt to you. And he's in the latter camp. That's that's homogeneous. That's like saying, we want to be the solution. That is a tell
but there
sign.
are examples where that works, John.
Where?
iPhone.
True.
Right. I mean, and I would say Oracle is another example. It's differentiated. It's not a strategy for everybody. You better have some real advantages in order to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's locked up the supply chain around $250 billion. He's got a two-sided supply chain developing. He's got the supply chain on one side locked in for multiple years, and now he's got the ecosystem supply chain on the other, which was really amazing. The show was booming with partners. So NVIDIA has it, and I think might have been the only analyst that point this out, Dave, but NVIDIA's proprietary position is the two-sided supply chain.
Yeah.
So ecosystem on one side and hardware on the other, and they're owning it both.
Because there's a retort.
That's a moat.
But there's a retort to my pointing out that there's a couple of examples that have worked. There are a lot more examples perhaps that haven't worked. DEC, Wang, Prime, DG, Unix, right? Those are all sort of quasi-closed systems, closed systems.
Apple works because it's not a heterogeneous environment. The question is, does enterprise computing go homogeneous, meaning does everyone adopt one thing? And I've never seen, I might be proven wrong, because again, AI is a whole other game change generation. Maybe maybe I'm your father's cloud kind of guy.
What's Windows? Everybody adopted that.
Well, it's open standard.
It was a de facto standard.
The hardware under the covers.
It was a de facto standard.
You said NVIDIA's win and tell for the Wintel monopoly. Okay,
but they were both de facto standards, though.
Yes,
they weren't open standards in the sense that you couldn't just,
well,
they weren't open source.
Windows was the system software, the operating system that ran on the open PC. Anyone could build an operating system, but once you get critical mass, they had also the Office suites. They had the application suite and the system software. So what rhymes again is monopoly, right? So GTC, kind of you're starting to see those signs where if they're going to be win and tell with the two-sided supply chain, essentially they're Intel and Windows. To your point, I mean, how many pods ago was that? That was like feels like years ago, but only a few pods. That's different. So the question is going to be, does the plumbing on Ethernet make that the standard? So like again, there's a lot of things to unpack there, but at the end of the day, the bet is Apple was a commodity. Their proprietary phone enabled the App Store. That was their monopoly, and everyone uses a phone.
Right.
Apple. Android, I can't use iMessage with Android, and so there's no interoperability. That's an inconvenience when you're on a plane or wherever.
Android's more open, right? It's got more volume.
Is the market heterogeneous, meaning interoperable across players? Is it a multiplayer game or is it a single player game? That's the question.
Snowflake Databricks. You know, this is the age-old argument in our industry.
I would bet on theCUBE, and I'll say it here, heterogeneous will win. Nvidia will not win.
I'll say it differently.
Nvidia won't win
I
at
will
all.
say it differently. Heterogeneous won't lose, right? But there will be homogeneous stacks that will thrive. And I think Nvidia will be one of them.
Yeah.
Because it has differentiable advantage.
I think the key to Nvidia, I would say, to support kind of their stock price and their mode is that because they got the supply chain on the hardware nailed down, and that's why he produced the roadmap the way he did. I'm going to put it out there, 4 years out.
Catch me if you can.
Game on. We're AMD, Broadcom. So I think Broadcom is probably sitting in their war room going, okay, AMD, let's go.
Well, I saw, you see Ray, did you see Ray on Squawk this morning?
No.
Ray's great. He's like soundbite king. He's so fast. He's so smart. But one of the things they asked him was, who's number 2? And his answer was Google with TPUs. But I think the real answer is Broadcom is the number 2. To me, they're 1 and 1A, because Broadcom is supplying the Googles, the Metas, right? Microsofts of the world. Well, sorry, maybe not Microsoft, right? Google, Meta, ByteDance, and then some others. We're not really sure. Maybe it's Microsoft, maybe it's Alibaba, right? It's not AWS because that's Marvell. But that to the point is, I think Ray maybe has a blind spot, or maybe he just sort of forgot, but Broadcom is the custom silicon provider. Talk about moats, right? They've got some deep relationships with some enduring long-term customers. So that's why and you look at Broadcom, what is Charlie's thing? It's his OSP, open, scalable, low power, right? OSP.
Yeah. Everything's bounded by power right now.
And so open is their philosophy. And that's how they win in this market relative to your point about homogeneous.
Yeah, I mean, I think Broadcom is not going to sit back. I saw Jaz Tremblay at Nvidia. His comment was, off the record, but generally I'll summarize by saying, he didn't say this exactly in my words, rising tide floats all boats, because this is a generational shift. And I think their OSP works. And I think you're going to start to see other people enter the fray. I think IBM's got a big play there. Their Z, I'm really bullish on the Z announcement on April 8th. When people see that, I think it might open some eyes that mainframes aren't mainframes anymore. They're basically supercomputing. So what they've done with Red Hat, what they're doing with the stack that they own the compilers, they own everything in there. So I think, and they nailed the density problem. They don't have a lot of density that NVIDIA does, and they have a power envelope that fits in a data center and performs to the level of standards that people are seeing in the AI factory. So I think one, they're going to crush the mainframe market upgrade, and two, you're going to see kind of new things emerge. So again, I think there could be wild cards.
So the other thing that Ray said, they asked him, what's the risk to NVIDIA? And he kind of went to inferencing. I'm not so sure. I thought Jensen laid out a pretty good case that he's going to play big in the inferencing market. Do you buy that?
Yeah, absolutely. He laid that out, and he also highlighted.
So I don't see inferencing.
He also laid out and pointed out as how people think it's easy to do inference, because people think training's the hard part.
Yeah.
He said no, inference is harder because of the first token out.
I think inference is much more of an opportunity than a threat to NVIDIA. I think the threats are. Did you see the Wall Street Journal article this week on Taiwan and how China's could potentially the gaming of how they're going to blockade Taiwan? I think that's a risk. Lack of having a foundry is a risk. I think public policy is another risk.
Silicon Sands better be up and running in Arizona and Texas. I mean, you're starting to see the data centers. Well, New York Times had a great spread. I saw an article about them laying out to the mainstream about the importance of these data centers, how they're being in these remote locations where there's a lot of, they can use power.
Power is a risk.
Yeah.
Those to me are the big risks to the Nvidia, 10-year run moat scenario. It's Taiwan. It's certainly not. It's Taiwan. It's public policy, and it's how are you going to power these things in the enterprise? Because Jensen did sort of make it sound like he thanked everybody for converting to liquid cooled. Well, maybe the hyperscalers are doing that, but most enterprises aren't. Right?
Yeah, exactly. The one thing I wanted to bring up with you, because we had a call about our awards program, the CUBE Awards. We're going to redo that again. So that was such a great success. Looks like we're going to redo it again.
Awesome. Yeah.
And we're going to add more judges, and also it's going to be open to everybody. That's going to be some changes, but some all good changes. But one of the things that came out of that awards program is that the role of companies doing innovation is high. Also, I should mention, because she reminded me, Mary Camerata gave me the idea for award programs like 3 years ago at AWS. Mary, that's a shout out for you. Thanks for the idea. Bava Communications brought it up because randomly, the universe has its ways of working. They saw the idea too, and because of Mary, I'm like, I love this idea, been thinking about it for a while. So shout out to Liz over at Bava and the team over there, Amber and Liz at Bava Communications. We're going to do it again. So a little shout out for the team. Other news, Dave, Google announced Gemini reasoning, okay, 2.5 Pro chain of thought. Microsoft Copilot gets reasoning, advanced research analysis. You mentioned DeepSeek. Databricks partners with Anthropic, talking about reinforced learning. So now here we go. Reasoning, advanced learning, reinforced learning. This is the progression, as you say, sequence of events that's going down. This shows the acceleration of some of the machine learning and generative AI techniques, and predictive analytics and Gen AI are completely intersecting, and you're seeing a lot of benefits in fraud detection, all these kind of production workloads. So again, that's cool. AWS enhanced quick sites, business intelligence with AI agents. DeepSeek's got V3 under MIT license. We have browser uses up, and we saw
talent.
We saw Island raise some big money. We interviewed them at RSA. So, love that concept.
So remember, Palo Alto a while ago bought Talon, which is browser security, for like $600 million, and Island just got a $5 billion valuation. So that acquisition is actually looking pretty good, right? Yeah.
Next, Hop AI launches a $110 million Series A. Former Arista COO came on theCUBE exclusive. We got a video on that. That was also a shout out to Brian Bauman at NYSE Wired. He reeled that in as well. They're part of the AI Infrastructure Leaders program that he's running. Broadcom's got new chips. AMD partners with Rapt AI to automate workloads on Instinct GPUs. Cyber, we were just at the Cyber show. We had Exonius, we had Chain Guard. So you're starting to see platform engineering, security, AI kind of coming together. What else is going on? CrowdStrike expands Falcon exposure management with network vulnerability support. And just everything from like even just sloppiness in the White House with the Yemen war plans shared up to the Atlantic editor on Signal. I mean, did you read the threads? They're public now. Okay,
yeah.
I'm like, this is unbelievable. First of all, I loved it. I'm like, oh yeah, go, launch. And then
it's like
they're like, those aren't war plans.
Like
I'm like,
WikiLeaks.
that's like war plans to me. I mean, I'm sorry.
And not only that.
Well, the walk back was there were no specifics. Right, like there were specifics. The weather's good. It's a green light. Go team. Good luck to the troops.
And of course, the conspiracy.
That says green light laid down.
The conspiracy theories, or somebody put in invited somehow the Atlantic writer, because he's the most negative writer on the planet. So the Dems inserted that. I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
You wonder if it's not to put my conspiracy theory hat on, but I wouldn't put it past Trump saying, let's put this out there and have people just twist into this. Let's feed the beast. Like, I mean, if you're not entertained by those chats,
I know.
I mean,
it's the distraction.
It's inside the machinery. I mean, that's a breach. That's clearance. Yeah, that's information.
Well, they're going to call in Elon to figure out how that happened. Like,
again,
don't use Signal.
Okay, and then I saw another story about Trump. I
Don't
don't look
use
at the,
text
Trump.
for-
I don't look at the stock market. This first term, all he did was look at the stock market. Look how good I'm doing. The stock market's tanking 2 days in a row in Wall Street. Tech stocks are down. The option guys were going crazy behind us. It was like trading places here today. Like sell, sell, sell. You know, it's like, oh man.
I think, you know, here's my take on the market right now. I think that the market was obviously getting toppy. So something was going to take it down. Now they're pointing to tariffs, but tariffs in and of themselves, you know, I think if the market were at a low, you know, I don't think it would matter. But I think because the market's, you know, really, really toppy, and if you look at the ETR data, people are pulling back on spending expectations. I've got a look at preliminary.
What's your dashboard say?
So check it out. So we ended last year at about just under 4% IT spending growth. Expectation coming into this year was 5.3%. Now the preliminary data says it's down under 3.5%. So that's a serious move from 5.3 to 3.4% below last year's actual. So that to me is just a signal of uncertainty. Okay, and that is a function of what's going on in public policy right now. So this always happens, right? And then when things get better, these numbers will pop up. You know, the trend is your friend kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, but right now, people are sitting on their hands. All the spending momentum is coming down. And I do think the other thing that happens, I've said this many, many times, always during these transitions, there's confusion. The new stuff is not big enough to offset the decline in the old stuff. The old stuff will see dead cat bounces, and people say, oh, Intel's back. Intel's not back. Right, they got some work to do.
Yeah,
so you'll get these dead cat bounces and things like that when you're transitioning from a world of x86 to a world of accelerated computing. And it's not a smooth line. Ken Olson used to say, yeah, I don't like your IDC forecast. They all go up in a smooth line. Markets don't work that way. Ken Olson was right. Markets go up, they come down, they're really choppy. And so you're going to see some choppiness here until you get to that really steep part of the S-curve. And then, you know, it kicks in.
There's some beds. I mean, the signals are happening. We said the sky would fall last year. We were off. Maybe it's coming back. We were off by a year. Other news around the doom and gloom is that 23andMe, once valued at $3.5 billion, filed for bankruptcy. Everyone knows that they were the first ones to do that, ancestry test.
I liked 23andMe. It said I was 93% Italian. You know, my brothers were only 85%, so that was like bragging rights. And now I'm like, get my data out of there. I'm afraid where it's going to go.
Well, who's going to get my data?
Yeah, well, I'm worried about that.
You know,
I need to delete my account. They
yeah,
got my bragging
the whole
rights.
family tree we didn't even know existed on the Furrier side. It's like, whoa, there's more of us out there. Watch out. Okay, we're looking for some CUBE hosts. Come on. Yeah, pretty
stuff.
crazy times. Well, Dave,
Next week?
you know, we got a lot of action. We got KubeCon in London. That's the EU version going on. We'll be on-site interviews there. Cloud native again. We'll hear a lot of AI there. Next week, we're doing a robotics and AI week here at the NYSE.
Awesome. How timely is that, John?
NYSE Wired.
Given what Jensen was just showing.
Yeah, I mean, we also got outreach for supercomputing coming up. So if you're listening and you're going to be at supercomputing this year, theCUBE will be there. So hit us up if you want to get some media action there. But next week, Citi is running an event here at the NYSE. And as part of our Wired kind of digital twin effort, Brian Bauman has secured, and we're getting great guests from that program. They're going to be in the big hall here in Stock Exchange. We're going to bring them into our studio here, and our other studio will probably have 2 studios going on, and then Google Cloud next. And then we just found out in June, the last week of June, the week you're at HPE Discover, I'm going to be hosting another Crypto Trailblazers. Trump Jr. is going to be here. Michael Saylor is going to be here. David Sachs is going to be here. Brian Bauman's hosting a roundtable. It looks like the NYSE is going to be the crypto exchange. All the crypto guys are excited about the NYSE. It's prestigious, it's a monument to capitalism, and now with the efficiencies in blockchain, NYSE is being viewed as the crypto exchange because of the prestige, the capital, and just all the action around it. So this could be a really big moment in history where the first wave of crypto IPOs come online. It reminds me of the early days of tech when Intel was just this startup and then they go public, and you know, so you had each herd has its own kind of place. I think the NYSE looks like is lined up. They're the leader in attracting the crypto communities because of the Brian Bauman's Wired work and the CUBE work and all the brand of the NYSE culture fits with crypto innovators.
And we called it. You had said, hey, you know what? There's going to be a period of time where all these crypto developers they're flocking to AI. Remember that on the CUBE pod? And I said, yeah, and eventually those two worlds are going to come together, and that's exactly what's happening now.
Yeah, and what's also happening, which is like, we didn't really call it this way, but we kind of sensed it. It's more obvious now that the fog is lifting. All the AI infrastructure work that's being retooled is actually in line as a distributed computing paradigm with decentralization. So decentralized infrastructure like blockchain fits beautifully into the paradigm of AI. So again, what's rhyming in AI and blockchain and decentralization, whether it's DeFi or decentralized applications, is efficiencies are driven and free markets work. When you have free market capitalism isn't a bad thing. Like right now, there is no capitalism in tech because all the major platforms are basically monopolies. So, you know, they control, they can deplatform you. We'll probably get deplatformed just by saying that.
Yeah.
But that's not free market. You know.
Be debanked?
Deplatform. We might even be shadow banned. Who knows? But you could lose. That's why journalism is hurting. So I think you're going to see a serious cultural societal change from social freedom, social democracy, social finance, social capitalism infused into all things societal change. This is where, again, computer science meets social science is happening right now. Steve Jobs had that famous technology, liberal arts, sign that would look like street signs. That's happening at a whole nother level. So it's super exciting time. Stay here with theCUBE. We're going to be covering it all, obviously from our 2 new studios. These are our digital hubs. Wall Street here at the NYSE, and of course in Palo Alto, and of course NYSE Wired with Brian Bauman. He is unbelievably putting together some amazing community and content. You're seeing a lot more involvement. I mean, I've learned so much already around, say, philanthropy from Elliot Donnelly. Elliot Donnelly is a part of our team, virtual team, a collaboration. It's not part of the team, but in this community, this trusted network, he's opened our eyes to the fact that philanthropy has been struggling. So that's being reinvented. And there are smart people like Suze McCormick at Forrester Morrison and Elliot Donnelly and a lot of these visionary social change agents with money, billionaires, who are saying, hey, we could actually just align with people that are impact vehicles, like for-profit companies. This is the best innovation I've seen in that world in my life. I mean, I never even knew that was possible, but hats off to the pioneers and the trailblazers in philanthropy and impact, like Elliot Donnelly, like Forward Global, like Edward Zhang, others. You're going to see real players step up with the goods and make change. And again, companies will come out of it for profit. This is not like, hey, everything's non-profit. No. Let's be clear. Capitalism could be free. And if this continues, there could be a path for a universal income where we have a free, safe society where you don't have to work. AI does the work. Why destroy the planet when you can have peace?
Well, they say if we live till 2050, we're never going to die. And I'm not sure I want to live forever. But
well, I think we'll be dead by that.
And I'm not sure, I don't think I'll make it to 2050, which is probably a good thing. Knock wood, but I'd like to make it for a few
Can you imagine if our CUBE pod was automated?
Well, so you've seen these conversational AIs that are getting really good.
Perplexity is getting very good. Some of our R&D that we've been doing with the John and Dave virtual agents, you could.
And it's getting to the point where you can't even tell the difference. You can start having conversations. You can interrupt them, and there's, they're really doing a much better job anticipating.
We got our April, by the way, Agentic Agent Builder Summit in Palo Alto in April. That date's going to be, what date is that? Let me pull up my notes here. April 16th. Agent Builders, a dedicated conference put on by theCUBE Research focusing on building out agent solutions, infrastructure, and technology. That's foundational. And again, back to Jensen Huang to kind of wrap up, one of the things he said was, AI is not a technology, it's a foundational thing. And he even said, we're not an AI company, we're an infrastructure company. So he's kind of repositioning himself because he knows he's got it in the bag. He's sandbagged, he's got the supply chain. So, gotta love Nvidia. Again, hats off to them. Dave, great to see you.
Good to see you, John.
Anything else on your mind?
I'm just excited to be back in the fold and gearing up for the spring season. I mean, it's going to be crazy.
How was your vacation?
It was awesome. BVI was not on my bucket list, but it was very worthy. A lot of diversity in the islands. We went by Richard Branson's island. I was texting Brian and said, what's the story, Brian? Because he does the thing every year, the kite surfing on
Island AI.
Island AI. And
exclusive,
like,
the Davos of AI.
Can you set me up with Richie? And he was kidding. Like,
did you go by Epstein's Island?
No, I didn't notice that. But
empty.
You know what we did see? I'll tell you something very cool that we saw. There's these monohulls. I learned a lot about sailing. You have catamarans, right? And then monohull is the single hull. Wendy, is it Wendy? Eric Schmidt's wife? Yeah, Wendy Schmidt, Eric Schmidt's ex, there was a regatta, okay? And they have these giant monohulls. They're like 100 million a piece. They go 40 knots. Okay, and they had a regatta, and we saw them out practicing, and her yacht was there. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's a crew of about almost 30 guys. So we saw them out practicing, and it was really amazing. We were out one day, and it was like 10 knot winds, and they were going like 25 knots. That's how awesome these boats are. They just like, whew. You could water ski behind those.
Selling some of that Bitcoin, Dave?
Yeah. That's a different stratosphere.
Picking out an island, you're looking at boats.
No, so what happened is we did like 7 islands in 10 days. So every island's different. It really wasn't a boat, to be honest with you. It was more of a floating bar.
You look good.
Just
Great,
leave it
good
there.
to see you. Got a
Thanks,
big spring window with the CUBE events. Of course, a lot more content coming out of our studios. Our goal this year is to do as much video editorial as our SiliconANGLE great team pumping out written content. So match that up. Of course, we have all the awesome CUBE services events. Again, it's fun to bring everything together. Dave, good to see you. And thanks for watching.
Shout out to Ken, making the trip.
Ken, great to see you in New York. Yes, this is burning the midnight oil here. We don't leave. You get a cot here. Where's our dorm room here?
The futon.
A futon in the corner. All right, that's a wrap up for the CUBE Pod, episode 96. Almost at 100, Dave. Four more.
Can't wait. Sorry that I was slacking there a couple of weeks.
I had Elliot Donnelly fill in. He was awesome. And we missed it last week because of GTC. I was literally too burnt out to do anything. Really tired after that long week. But thanks for listening. Check out SiliconANGLE.com, thecube.net. Check out theCubeAI.com. We're constantly adding more prompt answers to theCUBE. Type in a query that you might be interested with. There might be an answer from a CUBE interview. And match it to Perplexity, see how it does. Of course, you get the reference on CUBE, and of course, check out the CUBE research. And when you get the CUBE research, click on the research button, and you'll see all the latest research. That's free, all free content, of course. Continuing to do that, extracting the signal from the noise, where computer science meets social science. I'm John Furrier, Dave Vellante. Thanks for listening.
Everybody.
Hello everyone, welcome to theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, your host. Join theCUBE and myself at RSA 2025 this year, taking place in San Francisco, April 28th to May 1st. This is an unparalleled cybersecurity experience. This is an opportunity to dive into expert-led sessions, discover groundbreaking solutions, and network with top industry leaders from around the world. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skills, explore new trends, or connect with like-minded professionals, there's something for everybody. Come away with new strategies, insights, and connections to elevate your game in the cybersecurity journey. Many voices, one community. Check out rsa.com/thecube25 to learn more and register. That's rsaconference.com/thecube25 to learn more and register.